going on, guys, and welcome to my Blood DK guide. Here I'll discuss everything from the very basics to the very advanced, because it seems due to the Wallers of Draenor pre-release, a lot of people are boosting DKs with the intention of tanking. So when I say very basic, I mean very basic. So let's crack on with the basics. A DK has two ways of casting abilities, through runes and runic power. Runes generate themselves over time, and runic power is generated through using abilities. And as a DK, you're a very punchy class. You know, you have a big two-hander, no shield, you just kind of go in balls deep, just hitting things. Death Strike is your main ability because obviously it heals you for 7% minimum of your health, or 20% of the damage you've recently sustained, well, within the last 5 seconds. Primarily, you're going to want Mastery. Up until about 200%, when you can start looking at going crit. Stamina kind of comes passively with gear, but the odd stamina gem does help increase your health pool. But yeah, I would mainly say Mastery, and then Haste is also quite passive. Like all the tier items, or most of the tier items, seem to carry Expertise or Haste. And Expertise you want to get to the cap, similar to Hit. And apart from that, Haste helps global cooldown and rune regeneration, and Crit is just simple damage output. You know, you can't beat a bit of crit. And what I've found is that the Blood DKs are very easy to play quite average, in the sense that you can't go too wrong, but it takes quite a lot of work to play them at their full potential. Now, for a bit of background about me, I've been playing a Blood DK for years. I heroic progressed through ICC, and from there on up until about Dragon Soul, where I took a break because I think most people just, you know, yeah, Dragon Soul. But came back recently, and I'm, you know, getting back into it. Almost good Garrosh now with my guild on 13 out of 14. Hopefully soon we'll get him down. But to me, Blood DK is just a very fun class, but at the same time it's very effective, and it's just so much fun. You have such a high damage output, and you have such a high amount of self-heals, and yeah, just a very beautiful class made by Blizzard. So let's talk about talents and glyphs. For the first tier, it's really a toss-up between Rolling Blood and Plague Leech, I'd say. Rolling Blood is very AoE orientated, because it's very nice to get out those punching blood boils, and at the same time spread the dots, instead of having to use Strangulate and then Blood Boil. However, Plague Leech single target reigns supreme, without a shadow of a doubt. You know, the ability to consume your diseases and cast an additional Death Strike is by far, you know, more effective, because I mean, for a Blood DK, the more Death Strikes, the better. So the second tier, you're going to want to take Purgatory. Anti-Magic Zone's good, but you can't beat that second chance at life. Like, there's the odd occasion where things go wrong, and it saves a wipe because, you know, you have that extra few seconds of healers to burst you back up. Whereas Anti-Magic Zone is very effective. I mean, throughout the whole of Siege of Orgrimmar especially, there is a lot of magic damage going out, and it is very, very nice to be able to block some of that. For example, on Garrosh, the Whirling Corruption, that's always handy. But Purgatory, I would say, is a definite go for Blood DK. Now, the third tier is an interesting one, and this is probably where I find myself switching more commonly than the other ones. Death's Advance is very useful in the sense that it gets you where you want to be that much quicker. Whereas Asphyxiate, you know, the stun is very, very nice. Fights like Nazgûl, where you have the Iron Blades and the War Shamans that need to be stunned, it comes in so handy, especially if you can rotate the stuns with your raid team. It's so effective. But I'd say the majority of fights I do use Death Advance. For the fourth tier, I'd say Death Pact is a definite go. It's always nice to have that backup big heal to take you up. You know, you have those moments where your health does drop a bit low, and it's nice to be able to just help the healers out and take your health right back up to the top. Conversion, some people say to take Conversion, but I disagree. I say Death Pact is definitely the way forward. For the fifth tier, Runic Corruption, I would say, is a definite go. It's always nice to time those rune strikes to get that Runic Corruption proc, whereas Blood Tap, People do suggest it, but it's quite hard to work into your rotation. I mean, some people just macro it to Death Strike, say, which I don't find very effective, because Runic Corruption is such, you get that 100% rune regeneration rate for 2.5 seconds, which is incredible. You can get so many more Death Strikes off long term with that, done by using Blood Tap. And then finally, it's really a toss-up between Gorfin's Grasp and Remorseless Winter. I mean, Desecrated Ground I don't find very useful at all, but I find myself switching between Remorseless Winter and Gorfin's Grasp quite a lot, simply because there are fights where you want that AoE stun, like Garrosh, for example, where as soon as he casts his War Song, you do really need to stun those adds, because they do start hitting like an absolute truck. Whereas Gorfin's Grasp is useful in the sense that it gathers the adds together, and it's more crowd control-y than Remorseless Winter, but I say I find myself using Remorseless Winter more than Gorfin's Grasp, which I guess is unusual, but it works for me. And I guess you should try that out for yourself and see which one you think works better. Okay, on to glyphs. So for glyphs, I definitely suggest Glyph of Outbreak to complement Plague Leech, because it is really effective in the sense that you can build up that runic power with your dots and Death Strikes and Heart Strikes, and cast Outbreak, spread that, then Plague Leech off, and pretty much Outbreak instantaneously, because you have that runic power ready for the Outbreak, and you get the runes back for the Death Strike. Other mages, I would say Glyph of Anti-Magic Shell is useful in the sense that it just extends it to the full absorption limit, and Festering Blood really works well for AoE situations where you're gonna have to apply that quick damage to get the threat without being able to spread your dots. So they're the three I would suggest. I also do use Icebound Fortitude, because quicker cooldown is useful in the sense that you want to tank a very quick burst of high damage. It is very useful, even though its duration is reduced by 75%. I still say that for something like tanking Rook on Fallen Protectors, it's very useful for that. And also Pestilence is also a good one, because the extra radius does spread your dots further, which does help a lot. Okay, so let's move on to rotation. You're going to want to pull with Death Grip or Dark Command and throw your dots on with Icy Touch, and then as the target reaches melee range, hit Plague Strike. Then if there's more than one target, you're going to want to use Pestilence, but if there's not, then I'd still say Heart Strike again, and take that initial damage before you Death Strike, so you get more beneficial healing from the Death Strike. Death Strikes are what separates the good DKs from the great blood DKs, because it's really deciding whether to use it or to wait for some more damage to take the healing further and the absorbs further. But it's also nice to preempt high damage and get the absorbs up before that, so it's trying to find the perfect balance. And I think this is where most blood DKs kind of fall down, because they just spam Death Strike, no concerns, and just, it's not as effective as planning your Death Strikes and anticipating when to use the Death Strike. But they're pretty much your main core abilities. All you're going to want to do is make sure you keep your dots up, make sure you keep them spread if you are tanking more than one ad. Other than that, Rune Strike when you have enough runic power, Outbreak and Plague Leech to get those extra runes, and Dancing Rune Weapon on cooldown, but I'll talk about Dancing Rune Weapon later when I discuss gear, because that is quite influential later on. Bone Shield, just use that on cooldown, the extra, but the 2 set also helps that, which I will talk about. And you have so many cooldowns, Rune Tap every 30 seconds, that's a definite. Vampiric Blood for spiky situations, that's definitely a go. And then you have Death Pact that we talked about before. Racials sometimes help. I mean, I'm an Orc, so I have, Blood Fury, which does increase the DPS, which I found very useful, especially for trying to get to keep threat. Even though threat isn't really an issue anymore, it used to be. But now it seems like Blizzard just hand out threat for, fun. Soul Reaper as well. Soul Reaper is an ability that you're going to want to start casting when the target drops below 35% health, because it gives you such a haste increase. 50% haste for 5 seconds is incredible. So substitute Soul Reaper in for Heart Strike when the target drops below 35%. Anti-Magic Shell and Icebound Fortitude are probably the cooldowns I see myself using the most. Icebound Fortitude simply for the damage mitigation, and the Anti-Magic Cell for the magical damage mitigation, but the runic power you generate whilst using Anti-Magic Cell is incredible. Like, you can pretty much stand in the fire if you pop AMS and get full runic power and just rune strike the hell out of things, and it is really kind of effective in that sense. So in terms of AoE, it's mainly about spreading your diseases and hitting that blood boil, but at the same time you don't want to just tunnel vision on blood boil to the point where you don't death strike for that survivability. So some DKs just get into the zone and just blood boil the shit out of everything when they leave themselves quite vulnerable. So do spread those diseases, do blood boil, but at the same time don't forget about plague leech and death strike, because ultimately your main job is to survive. Other than that, I think we've pretty much covered the rotation, so let's move on to gear. The key items of gear that I'm going to talk about are the set and the trinkets and the weapon. So the 4 set for Blood Decays is actually very good. The 2 set I was a bit speculative at first as to whether or not it was effective, but I held back on the 2 set. I only had 1 tier item until I got the 4 set, and I went full 4 set. But I found that the additional charges of Bone Shield actually do kind of help. It's kind of very passive and you don't really notice it, but it does help quite a lot. Whereas the 4 set is you know, it's great. You have effectively an Empower Runic weapon every minute and 26 seconds with the trinket I'm going to talk about. So the trinkets, you're going to want to have Rook's Unlucky Talisman and Vial of Living Corruption, which drops off Malkrok. The other one drops off Fallen Protectors, of course. And the Vial of Living Corruption is incredible in the sense that it gives you the stamina for the extra health pool, and it also reduces the cooldown rate of your 6 major abilities by 19%. Only in tank rolls, but you know, still the 19% recovery rate is absolutely insane. Similar to this, Rook's Unlucky Talisman also gives a big stamina increase, and at the same time it gives you an ability where you can reduce the damage taken by AoE by 35%, which you might think, oh well, that's, you know, you might neglect what you kind of understand as AoE, like I did at first. But if you think all the ground abilities, all the Empower Will and Corruptions, all that kind of stuff is all AoE, and the mitigation is absolutely crazy in that sense. So in terms of weapons, Gartok Strength of the Faithful, which drops off Nazgrim, is very effective, but at the same time Britomant's Jagged Pike, which drops off Thog, is also very good. I probably prefer the Expertise and Mastery over the Haste and Mastery, but they both work really well. Similar to this, Xalator Desecrated Image of Gorehowl is also a good alternative, because even though it gives crit, you can reforge out of crit, but at the same time, when your gear starts to get higher, crit is quite beneficial because you have the survivability, so it turns into almost, can you output that much damage? So the main debate about DKs is whether or not the avoidance overweighs the mastery, like I mentioned before. So whether or not mitigating the damage in the first place as opposed to absorbing it later, like, is it worth it in that sense? I would personally say going mastery is much more fail-safe, in the sense that you know you've got that absorb to fall back on, but you're bound to take more damage in the first place. So the key is to just keep your rotation going, keep outbreaking, keep plague leeching, keep death striking, keep your cooldowns going, and you shouldn't be too vulnerable. I mean, the struggles I've had on Garrosh at the moment is that he hits like a truck and the spike is very high. I mean, DKs have always had trouble with spiky damage because you don't have a shield to fall back on. You know, you have a two-hander. So I personally prefer mastery. I can see why people would edge towards avoidance, but I think mastery is much more of a safer bet. And then I'm looking at going crit soon. I mean, I'm pretty much full normal gear now. I'm like 560. So as soon as I start getting heroic gear, I'm looking at reforging slightly into crit, see if I can take my DPS up another notch, and at the same time maintain that survivability that I have right now, which I think is what most DKs are doing. Other than that, I think I've covered just about everything. I mean, if you have any other questions, feel free to leave a comment or send me an email. That'll be in the description. Sorry if it's been a bit of a drag. I'm getting that it is a bit long, and there is a lot to cover, you know. There's such a huge scope for the Blood Decay, and if you just stumbled across this and you don't have a Blood Decay, I hope I've given you an insight into the class and that you might want to go and try it. I would definitely recommend trying it because it's very fun, very powerful. You just feel like an absolute boss. Just go try it, honestly. That's about it, I think. Yeah, I'm gonna be making some more videos soon. Probably not as boring as this one. I'm gonna try and make them a bit more entertaining, a bit more upbeat. Maybe a bit funny if I can do that. I'm not really that like a funny person, but I'll give it a go, you know. Yeah, maybe get some guildies involved and have a right laugh. So subscribe if you wanna be posted on that, I guess. Other than that, I'll see you guys next time.
Connor, why you ignore us?
It's because we're doing this all night.
How very cool.
Yeah.
We can down your beer now and again.
Yeah, this is like the second one in less than 5 minutes. It's going good. Going good, guys.
Going good.